Hi everyone and welcome back to the YouTube channel. So today we're going to talk about 3 niche mistakes that therapists make that keep them invisible. So if you are a therapist in private practice and you have been trying to clarify your niche but everything still feels vague, awkward or slightly forced, then this video is really for you. Because one of the biggest reasons therapists stay invisible online is not that they are bad at their work. Of course you are in general really the opposite, but it is that your positioning stays too unclear for the right clients to recognize. And very often that happens because of a few common niche mistakes. So in this video, I want to walk you through 3 of the biggest mistakes, niche mistakes that therapists make and what to do instead of them. So let's start with the first mistake. So the first mistake is trying to help everyone in the same sentence. And this is really probably one of the most common, if not the main mistakes among therapists and coaches. So a therapist writes something like, I help adults with anxiety, depression, trauma, stress, burnout, self-esteem, grief, relationship issues, and more. So that's just a representation. Of course, you might write something different, but it's just so that you can so that you understand the real problem that you want to help everyone with many different kind of problems. So now none of those things are wrong, but the problem is that when you try to include everything, then your message often becomes too broad to create recognition among your potential clients. So the right client doesn't only want to know that you can help with many things, but your potential clients want to feel that you understand their word, their current situation and their desired situation as well. And broad wording often sounds safe to the therapist, but vague and basic to the client. So it doesn't give them enough of a reason to stop and think, yes, this therapist might really get me. So if your niche statement sounds like a long list of everything you could possibly help with, then that may be one of the reasons your profile, website, or social content feels a bit invisible. So what should you do instead? Well, instead of trying to cover every possible issue, choose one area where your message can create stronger recognition, as I said in the previous video. So that could be a type of client. For example, adults who are high functioning but anxious underneath. Or it could be a type of struggle. For example, people pleasing, burnout or relationship patterns. So you are not denying that you can help with other things, but you are simply leading with more clarity, and that is a very different way of thinking about your work. So the second mistake is choosing a niche that sounds good on paper but doesn't feel natural to you. So that is also another big one mistake. So sometimes therapists choose a niche because they think they should, or because maybe they saw another therapist who chose that niche. So maybe it sounds profitable, impressive, or maybe other people online say it was the smart choice. But when you try to write about it, speak about it, or build content around it in general, then everything will feel stiff, and that usually means something important. It usually means that your niche is not grounded enough in your real understanding, your real interest, or your real way of working and aligned with your values as well. So a good niche is not just something that looks strategic, it should also feel communicable. So you should be able to describe that person or that struggle in a way that feels real and human as well. So you should be able to speak about it with clarity, warmth, confidence, and interest in that niche. Because if your niche doesn't feel natural in your mouth, then it will rarely feel natural on your website, your directory profile, or on your social media posts. So again, what should you do instead? Well, choose a niche that sits close to genuine clinical resonance. Ask yourself, who do you understand especially well? What kind of client presentations do I find easier to put into words? What kind of work would I actually be happy to do more of? So that is often a much better foundation than choosing something just because it seems commercially attractive. Because the best niche is not only the one that gets attention, but it is also the one that you can sustain through time. So the third mistake is making your niche too rigid or too narrow. So this is also the mistake that often happens after the first one. So a therapist realizes they have been told they have been too broad, so they overreact. And suddenly their niche becomes so narrow, so specific or so clinical that it becomes hard to use naturally. So you feel trapped by it and you start worrying, what if I want to work with other people too? What if this sounds too restrictive? Or what if I outgrow this later? And this is exactly why so many of you resist niche positioning in the first place, because you think niche means locking yourself into one identity forever. But it doesn't. A niche isn't a prison. It is just a current point of clarity to attract your potential clients so that a group of people can recognize with the words and the communication that you are using on your social media, on your website, on your directory profile, etc. So it is simply the clearest way to help the right people recognize your work right now. It is just a current point of clarity. So that means your niche should be specific enough to create recognition, but flexible enough to still feel human and usable. For example, you don't need something ultra detailed like I help women aged 32 to 37 with attachment wounds after emotionally unavailable parenting. Could that describe real client work? Of course, it could. But for most therapists, if it is too narrow and too hard, then it would be too hard to use everywhere and in a sustainable way. So something broader but still specific might work much better. For example, I help women who struggle with self-worth, overthinking, and emotionally one-sided relationships. So that is clearer. It will create instantly recognition, but it will still give you room to work with other type of clients as well. So what should you do instead? Well, aim for specificity without rigidity and without being too narrow. You want enough clarity that someone feels seen, but not so much restriction that your whole practice starts feeling boxed in. And that is the right balance. So let's bring this together. The three huge mistakes we are trying to help everyone in the same sentence. Choosing a niche that looks strategic but doesn't feel natural to communicate, and making your niche so narrow that it becomes rigid and difficult to live with. So if you can avoid those three mistakes, then niche positioning becomes much easier, because then you stop asking yourself, how do I market myself better? How do I position myself better? And you start asking yourself, how can I describe my work more clearly so the right people can recognize themselves in it? So that is the main question to remember and to ask yourself. That is a much better question. And for therapists like you, it is often a much more ethical one too as well. Because good positioning is not about becoming more salesy. It is just about becoming more understandable and more recognizable by your potential clients. So it is about helping the right client find you, trust you, and choose you more easily in the end. And it is about building a practice that feels more aligned, more visible, and more sustainable in the long run. So if this video helped you, then subscribe to the channel and put a little like. And if you want, you can also leave a comment with the niche that you are considering, and I will make another video showing how to turn that into a clear website, a directory statement, or some ideas to post on Instagram or Facebook, for example. So let's see each other for the next video. Goodbye.